Okay, so this will be the drawing lesson. I'm just going to go through the supplies that you'll need for this lesson. First thing is just a regular 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. The next thing that you'll need is a harder, more firm cardstock piece of paper. Not really Bristol board, but maybe something with a little bit more tooth, a little bit more grain to the paper, but something like as firm as a Bristol board paper. You will also need a regular pencil, eraser, a regular size ruler, so a 12-inch ruler or 30 centimeters, and lastly, masking tape, enough that you'll be able to get 4 pieces out of it for our final work of art. Okay, so we're going to take our regular 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and what you can do is you can take your ruler, you're going to place your ruler near the top of the paper, and you're going to trace both sides of the ruler without moving it. So you end up with a column the same width as the ruler. Then you're going to take the ruler, draw a line in the middle of that column, like so. And then you're going to draw 2 more lines on that first half. Notice how I did it pretty much the width of the ruler, and that way we end up with 3 equal sized boxes. And we're going to do the same thing repeated on the other side. Now you should end up with a column with 6 equal sized boxes. Now what you can do is you can number them below the box 1 through 6. What we are creating here is something called the grayscale. This will show us how light to dark our pencil can go. Now, one of the most common mistakes people make when doing drawing is they always hold their pencil right here. And that's fine for doing finer details and darker shading, but when most artists or people drawing, what they usually do, or what you should do, is you should actually hold your pencil near the end. This allows you to start with a light shade. Now, you should always go lighter to darker. You can always make things darker, but you can't make them lighter. People say, oh, you can erase, but that's not making them lighter, that's actually erasing them, and it affects the texture of the paper. So what we're going to do is we are going to hold our pencil at the very end, like this, and then we're not going to do anything to box number 1. We're going to leave it completely white. In fact, what you can do is you can cross out the 1, just to remind us that we're not going to do anything to box number 1. Now, holding your pencil at the very back, we are going to very lightly shade box number 2. Doesn't matter if you go outside of the lines, that's fine. Now, with this, we are not going to stop in box number 2 with this light shade. We are going to continue this same light shade into boxes number 3, 4, 5, and 6, because no matter what we do from this point on, we'll have at least this tone to work with. And with drawing, a lot of it is all about layering, even in painting as well, but with just drawing, we'll stick with drawing for now. With drawing, it's all about the layering of the pencil, and every time you layer pencil, it gets deeper and darker in tone, in value. So as you can see, we've gone all the way to the end of the scale with our light tone. It has not gotten darker, right? It has just been the same tone the entire time. Now, we're going to cross out the number 2 because we are done with box number 2. We're not going to do anything else with box number 2. Now, starting in box number 3, we want to make it a shade darker. So what we do is we take our fingers, we have our fingers here on the pencil. Now we're going to move our fingers up the pencil slightly, just a little bit. Shouldn't be all the way halfway up the pencil. Should be about, it's going to be in between halfway and the end of the pencil. And starting in box number 3, we are going to go over it again, and we're going to make this box a slighter, darker tone. Now, moving our fingers up the pencil, what that does is it makes us naturally apply more pressure. Now, once again, we've added the darker tone to box number 3. We're not going to stop at box number 3. We're going to continue into boxes 4, 5, and 6 with this same pressure, creating the same tone all the way down. And remember, if you're going outside of the lines, that's fine. It's not a big deal. We can always take, this is just our practice sheet. We're getting to know the pencil. We can always take our eraser afterwards and erase those lines. Once you've done that, take your pencil, cross out the number 3. We are done with box number 3. Now, box number 4, we want to make it a tone darker. We want to increase the value of it. We want to make it a little bit darker. So what do? We move our fingers up the pencil. Now, we are starting, the way I look at it is that we are starting at the line that's in the middle of the scale, so our fingers are in the middle of the pencil. So what we're going to do here is we are going to go a little bit darker, applying a bit more pressure, and also you'll notice that my pencil strokes are getting shorter and more controlled. And we are creating a bit of a darker tone. And once again, we're going to continue this same tone, the same value, all the way to the end of the scale. I also once again want to say, notice, I want you to take note of how my pencil strokes are getting shorter. And when I was back in these boxes here, I was doing more of the, trying to do the entire box with the pencil strokes. You'll notice right now I'm doing about half of the box. Okay, once you have that done, cross out the number 4. Box number 5, we want to make it darker again. So what we want to do is move our fingers up the pencil. You'll see where my fingers are placed on the pencil. And starting on box number 5, we've got to make it darker. You notice, once again, my pencil strokes should be getting even shorter. This gives it more concentration, more control. This is also how most, I find that most artists work drawings. But artists that are doing drawings with more detail, trying to get that what they call photorealism look, is that they start with the pencil, drawing with the pencil at the back, and then you eventually move your fingers more and more up the pencil as you work through the drawing, because you want to have it nice and loose to begin with and get some what they call gestural drawings. Gestural marks in there to get the idea of what the drawing should look like, a loose look of it. And then as you work through the drawing, your fingers move down the pencil because it gives you more control. Now, as you can see, boxes 5 and 6 now have that tone. I'm going to cross out box number 5 and continue continue in box number 6. This time our fingers are going to be slightly down the pencil. Alright. And we're going to do shorter pencil strokes. Tiny ones. And this should be the darkest tone that we can possibly get with our pencil. Now, I also want you to notice that there's not a giant leap from box number 5 to 6. Actually, there shouldn't be a giant leap from any of the boxes. They should all be a gradual change in tone. And shorter pencil strokes. And then we have our grayscale. Okay, I know it looks a little shiny. That's just the light from my table, my desk lamp, reflecting off the graphite. And if you want to, you can cross out your number 6. Also, at this point, if you wanted to, you could take your eraser and erase the line to make it more, or the lines going above the line to make it look more neat and tidy. I'm not going to worry about that. So, next step. What I want you to do, you're going to draw 2 cylinders. So we do the oval, flattened out oval, squashed oval for the top, straight lines for the sides, and then the bottom line. Most common mistake people do is they always do a straight line across. If we want to make this appear like a 3-dimensional shape, we do a curved line. This helps create what's called the illusion of depth. And that's D-E-P-T-H, not D-E-A-T-H, D-E-P-T-H. I'm going to create one there, and we're going to do a second one right here. Alright, so we have our 2 cylinders. I also want you at this top here, right up here, to draw an arrow. And we're going to draw a little tiny sun. This is what artists would refer to as the light source. Alright, now we're only going to work with this one cylinder for now, this one right here. And all I want you to do is very lightly draw a line down the center of that cylinder. I'm going to do mine a bit darker than I should, just so you can see it on camera. And then we're going to draw a second line in the middle of that first section. And we're going to draw a third line in the middle of the second section, like that. Now, this light source is a very important thing for an artist. This will help us determine where the light areas on an object are going to be and where the dark areas are. Whatever is closest to the sun is going to be the lightest area. Just for this drawing, we're going to say that the lightest area, since this top is the closest to the sun, is going to be the lightest area. So it would be comparable to box number 1. So we don't need to do anything to that top area. This section right here is close to the sun, but it's not the closest, right? It's the second closest. So this is going to be comparable to the second box in tone, in value. So where do we hold our pencil when we did box number 2? We held it at the end. So holding our pencil at the end, you're going to very lightly shade that first column. But just like the grayscale, we are going to continue this same light shade into the second column, and into the third column, and into the fourth column. One thing I really want you to take note of is how all my pencil strokes are going in the same direction. One of the key things in artwork is the same key thing in music, and that's rhythm. Alright, artists don't repeat sound, we repeat either shape, line, or color. And this creates a nice sort of unifies the whole drawing. So it's important to have your pencil strokes going in the same direction. Once we have that done, you can put a little X at the bottom of that first column to remind ourselves that we don't need to do anything else to this area. Okay? Box number 2, we want to make it, or sorry, column number 2, we want to make it a little bit darker. So you take our fingers, we move it slightly up the pencil, and we are going to make this column a tone darker. Now we're not going to stop in this column. We are going to continue with this tone, with this value, all the way to the end of the cylinder. Notice once again, pencil strokes all going in the same direction. Once again, if you get a little bit above the line, don't worry about it, because you can always take your eraser, whatever eraser later on, and erase that area to clean it up. Okay? So once you finish that, little X at the bottom of that second column, remind ourselves that we do not go back in this area. Box number 3, or sorry, column number 3, we're starting at the line in the middle. So where do you think our fingers should be? In the middle of the pencil. So starting at that line that we had. And some of you guys might be noticing that the lines are disappearing. That's okay. That's a good thing. By the end of it, we don't want to see those lines that we originally had. Okay? So from here, we're going to make this section a little bit darker. Once again, in order to do this, we've moved our fingers up the pencil, but also remember that we're shortening our pencil strokes. Once again, we're continuing this tone to the end of the cylinder. And once again, my pencil strokes all going in the same direction, up and down. Much easier to do it up and down as opposed to side to side. Alright, we have that third tone. Sorry, technically it's fourth tone if you want to include the first one, but we're going to put a little X at the bottom of that column. Now starting in box, or column, I keep doing that, column number 4, we are going to make it slightly darker by moving our fingers up the pencil. Notice that I'm not doing the darkest shade I possibly can with my fingers at the end of the pencil. This is, as we have, this one's like box number 1. This column's like box number 2. This tone's like 3. We've just done 4, so this area should be like box number 5. Box number 6, the darkest tone, we would actually save for our shadow. So we're going to create this like box number 5. Our fingers were low on the pencil, but not at the lowest point. And we're going to make this slightly darker. And we have that. Now, as you can see, these still look a little stripy, but we are getting there. We are getting to more of the three-dimensional look, as some kids would say, or some students would say. But it's actually called the illusion of depth. We're getting close to creating what's called the illusion of depth. Once again, if you wanted to, you could take your eraser and you could clean up the edges. Alright, this second cylinder we're going to approach a little bit differently. We are still going to have our light source coming from this area up here. We're still going with the same idea that we had before. So this is the lightest area. I want you to take your fingers, you're going to put them at the end of the pencil so we get that light tone, and I want you to very lightly shade the whole cylinder except for the top oval part. Very lightly. We're not going to put those lines down at this point. In fact, we're not going to be putting those lines down that we initially did on the other one at all. We're going to try to refine our drawing. So once again, my pencil strokes are all going in the same direction. I'm trying to, my goal with this too is also not to have it so it looks so scribbly. Alright, I'm going to try to make it more smooth. Now this is just one technique. With every artist you talk to, you're going to find that they all have different techniques and different looks that they go with. Some want the scribbling look to their artwork. For now, we're going to try to have more of a polished. For this lesson, we're going to try to have more of a polished look, more of a finished drawing, just so you can learn how to draw like the old masters did. Quite honestly, and make things look more realistic, if you will. Alright, so I have my light tone to the whole cylinder. I take my eraser and I can clean up that top area. Now, here's what I want you to do different this time. We're going to hold our pencils in the middle, and I want you to create a dark column at this edge. Alright, so we've created a dark column at that edge. Now, I sort of look at this next part, and this next part is probably the most important technique you're going to learn within this lesson. And that technique is called blending. We're going to try to make this tone very gradually turn into this tone. Now you'll notice there's a couple things here. Once again, my pencil strokes are only going to go up and down. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to continue to hold my pencil in the middle, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with that same pressure in this area, not at the edge, not at this edge, in the middle of it. I'm going to find that pressure that I had, and then I'm going to start to move this way to my left. And you'll notice that I'm doing it in a small section. I'm not trying to do the whole cylinder at the same time. And as I move left, what I'm doing is I'm lightening up on my pressure with my pencil, and eventually I'm going to have it turn into the tone that is already there. And I'm going to do that again here in the next section, in the next little area below it. If you try to do the whole cylinder at the same time, it ends up looking scribbly, and also people's lines end up being curved because they're doing this. And it creates sort of a rainbow, if you will, on its side. So you do smaller sections, and you try to match the row above it. And you're going to keep making your way down the complete cylinder until you reach the bottom. Then you have a blended cylinder. And as you can see the similarities between the two, except for this one doesn't look as stripy, but we needed to go through this one to understand how the different tones should be applied. Okay? If you really wanted to, you want to get even more details, what you could do is you could actually take your fingers and you could do a really tiny, skinny, thin column, dark edge. You can do a little dark edge here at this side, like this. And then work that with the same technique. Work it into that tone that was right beside it. That dark tone that we started off with. And there we have a shaded cylinder. Alright, so for this next one, this is our final drawing that we're going to be working on. We're going to need that smaller cardstock piece of paper. Now the one I have here is 6 inches by 8 inches. In centimeters, that is roughly 15 centimeters by 20 centimeters. Okay? Now what we're going to do is this. The first technique we're going to use has actually got nothing to do with the pencil. We're going to use our trusty old masking tape. Alright? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out pieces that are, I'm going to get a piece that's just slightly longer than the bottom of my paper. I'm going to tape it down. Now the one thing I want you to notice is that the tape is completely on the paper. I am not doing this. I am not doing tape that is half on the paper, half on my table like this. I am not doing that. Alright, because then what happens to a lot of the time is that people will do this, like it's off center or it's not straight. Also, it creates an uneven border all the way around. What we want to do is you want to have it so your tape is completely on the paper, right against the edge of the paper. Like that. And we're going to do that for all 4 sides. You can tape it down on the desk if you want to, or whatever surface you're drawing on. Or if you don't want to do that, what you can do is you can peel it up at the corners. And this is good if you can't do the drawing all in one day and you want to sort of tuck it away for a while. Lift it up so the tape stays on the paper, but the corners are lifted up. Turn it over and put the tape, wrap the tape around the back. The tape will not be staying on the paper. This is just for our initial, or for the beginning. By the end of the drawing, we will be taking the tape off of the drawing. Alright, so we have our taped piece of paper. Now we're going to start our finished drawing. Now, like I said before in the beginning of the video, we want to make sure that we start off light. Okay, so we're going to very lightly draw a cylinder. And we're going to do it a little bit lower than in the middle. Now you'll notice too that I'm not trying to define my line right away. I'm a little sketchy with it because we're just starting off. You start off light and you want to try to get everything right. And like we have an eraser, so you can always just erase those lines that you don't want. And like I said, one of the key things is to start light. Okay, believe it or not, that is a light drawing. If you start too dark, you can't erase things. You can't remove things. People will always see what's called like a ghost image of what you've drawn. And also, like I said, if you go to erase it, if you erase too hard, like when something's dark, you have to erase really hard, it affects the texture of the paper. And therefore, when you go to draw or shade in that area, your drawing will look different in those areas. Next thing I want you to do is this. You are going to draw a backward C with a smaller backward C in it. And as you can see, we are creating a mug. Okay? Then we're going to close off. Notice how I didn't go to the edge of the mug. I went to the inside. This helps create what's called the illusion of depth. We're going to close that off with curved lines like that. You can take your eraser and very gently erase the lines that are within that handle area. And we're already creating what's called the illusion of depth, right? It's starting to look three-dimensional. Now, here's the next thing I want you to do. You're going to take your ruler. You take the ruler and you're going to place it about halfway up the mug. And we're going to draw a line. Goes from one side of the paper to the next without it going all the way through the mug. This makes it look like a table's edge. Okay? Creating, once again, the illusion of depth. Now, we're going to have our sunlight, our light source, coming from the same area that we had in our rough work. Up here. You can even draw a little arrow up there to remind ourselves where it's coming from. So that's where the sun's coming from. Our shadow is going to go in the same direction. So right where the straight line meets the curved line, we are going to draw straight lines coming down from that area to the tape. This will become our shadow later on. Alright, now we are going to use the technique that we learned with our second cylinder. This cylinder right here, we are going to apply this technique to our mug. So the first step, if you remember, holding our pencil at the very end. And we're going to very lightly shade our cup. Just what I call the body of the cup, like the main part, this section, this whole section here, not the inside of the cup. Remember, we work from our lightest shades to our darker shades. So I'm very lightly shading the whole body of the cup very lightly. Now remember, my pencil strokes are all going in the same direction. And you can even, well, we're going to worry about the handle later on, so we can go around the handle. There, we have a light shade for our cup. Now, just like our second cylinder that we shaded last time, we're going to do our dark columns. So we're going to move our fingers halfway up the pencil. And we're going to do a dark column. I'm going to say you can go into where roughly the handle ends, like this. If you want to go a little bit further with it, go ahead. If you want to be a little bit shorter with it, go ahead. That's up to you. But I'm going to recommend that you do it about the width, I would say like the tip of my pinky finger. Well, a little bit skinnier than that, actually. Alright, we have our dark column. So the next step is we continue with our fingers in that, with fingers in the middle of the pencil, and we're going to do we start in the dark column area, and we start to move left with our dark shade, but as we move to the left, remember, the important thing is we lighten up on our pressure until it blends into the gray that's already there. And we're going to do this in small sections. There you go. And you'll notice that we can still sort of see rows, like the rows that I went into. And the way we can take that away is you can go back in if you want to, and you very lightly sort of go over where the rows meet. And you do little small pencil strokes. And you can keep repeating this over and over and over. But at the end of the day, we want this to look realistic, but not like a photograph. My rule is, if you want something to look like a photograph, become a photographer. Alright, once again, if we want to, we can do that darker edge. And then blend that into, very quickly, blend it into the gray tone, the value that is right beside it. You do not want to do an outline. You'll notice that I do not do an outline. The only thing that has black outlines in life are comic book drawings. If you look at my hand does not have a black outline to it, okay, or a dark outline. Alright, with the handle, let's do the handle. We're going to lightly shade the whole handle. Now, some people would approach this in different ways. What we're going to do is, our light source is still coming from up here. So technically this will be light, this top area will be lighter than this area. So what we can do is we can hold our fingers in the middle of the pencil, and we do a dark column down here. But you don't have to do super dark. And then you can make it lighter as it goes up, and even do darker on the edge here, and blend that in. You could even, if you wanted to, cast the shadow of the handle onto the cup like this. That way it also makes the handle pop out more. Okay, and you can do that for up here too. And you can actually do a bit of a darker tone under the bottom of the bottom of the top part, and blend that in. Okay, and then I wouldn't even worry about cleaning that up, because you'll see what we're going to be doing in the background. Now, next thing we want to do is we want to create the illusion of depth with what would be the table area. So what we want to do is we want to give a light tone. This time we're doing light tone and we're going sideways. So if you have it taped down to the table like this, your pencil's going this way. You're holding your pencil at the end again. And we're going to do a light tone from the table line all the way down to the bottom where the tape is. And if it gets into the shadow area, it doesn't really matter. As you can see, I'm going into the shadow area. Doesn't matter. Now, we're going to move our fingers to the middle of the pencil, and we're going to do a dark column. Once again, going to side. This time, when you're doing a dark column, don't stop. I want you to try to continue and use the same technique that we used on the side of the mug here. And we went this way. This time when you're going down, you're going to lighten up on your pressure and blend it in. And as you can see, there's little bits and pieces here that sort of aren't finished up. I tend to go in after and just try to lightly clean that area up. Okay. And then we do the same thing. Now this gets a little tricky in this area. You're working with a very, very small area. And once again, blending it into the gray that's already there. Okay? Now the one thing we have to do is we actually have to do the inside of the cup. Now since our light source is coming from here, believe it or not, the trick is that our shading for the inside of the cup is opposite to the outside of the cup. So what you're going to do is you're going to lightly shade that top oval. And then we are going to hold our pencil in the middle, we are going to do a dark column right in this little corner area of the inside. Like that. But then we're going to take this and we are going to do the same technique we did before. Holding your pencil, in the middle. And as you move your way out, move it to the right. You lighten up on the pressure. Until it blends into the gray that's already there. And we've created what's called the illusion of depth. Now we have two areas left. The background and the shadow. And they are both going to be the same tone. We're going to hold our pencil at the bottom. And we're going to do the darkest tone we can for those areas. Now you'll notice that my pencil strokes are going in the same direction as the lines that we laid down for the shadow. Now some people might notice that as they're drawing, their hand is going to get dirty. See how my hand right here is getting shiny? The one thing you can do is you can take a separate piece of paper and you can always lay it down and rest your hand on that. So that way you're not smudging your drawing. Okay? And that's another thing too that I'd like to point out is that a lot of people will take their finger and they smudge to try to blend it all in. I don't know too many artists that actually smudge their drawings to work the pencil in. You should try to learn that, how to blend with just simply using the tool. Okay? That's just my personal opinion. To me, when people smudge, it ends up looking like a smudge drawing as opposed to an actual drawing. I'd much rather see the artist's pencil strokes than smudges everywhere. So, even my pencil strokes are getting a little big. So I'm going to go back over them, make them darker, shorten them up. I don't want them to look like scribble marks. That's my biggest thing I'm thinking about right now. Now, one thing I do too is that I will actually take my pencil and I might go in a different direction here just to sort of create like a border for my pencil to go to. You'll notice that I also have little white areas there. As I said before, I can go back in later on very carefully and fill those in. Like that. And we have our shadow. Don't worry about getting, well, one thing I should have mentioned earlier, don't worry about getting the pencil on the tape. That's what it's there for. Now we are going to take this same tone, this same value, and do it in the background. So I'm going to take my piece of paper, I'm laying over my drawing so my hand can rest on that. Excuse me. And I'm going to start with my background. I'm going to create that little line that I want. So my pencil has somewhere to stop at. Almost like I'm creating a bumper for my pencil, if you will. And you should be able to see a difference between the top of the table, where the line is, and the background, like mine. Okay? And this is probably going to be the most longest, boring part of your entire drawing. But the good news is, when you're done this, we are done the drawing. So, we're going to take our time. Notice how my pencil strokes are all going in the same direction, and I'm going to keep that for the entire background. I'm not going to have some pencil strokes going this way, and then sideways. That breaks up the rhythm of the work. Okay? The only time I'm going to change it up is when I want to sort of create, like I said, the bumper. Now notice how, like I talked about having a dark outline around the object. I'm not keeping that dark outline. I'm just using this dark outline as my bumper. Okay? So that way my pencil has a stopping point, right? It knows where to go to, like that. Alright, I'm going to continue this for the entire background, and in a minute you'll see what the finished drawing looks like. Alright, as you can see, I've finished the background. One thing I want to talk about too is you can still see all these directional pencil strokes, right, in the dark areas. Shadow, background. Some people might be okay with that, and that's awesome. Some people want to have more of a smoother look, right? So it's not as distracting. And the way we accomplish creating more of a smoother look is we actually have to have our pencil strokes. We do another layer of our pencil strokes going in the exact opposite direction. So with my shadow, my pencil strokes are all going in the same angle that of those lines that we originally laid down. So what I would do to smooth it out is I would actually have my lines. I'd do another layer of lines going in the exact opposite direction. And this helps smooth out or take away the directional pencil lines. and it has more of a unified look. Like that. So I'm going to do the same thing to the background. And what this does as well is it makes those dark areas even darker. So I'll come back in just a minute and show you the finished product. Alright, there we have it. We have our finished drawing of our mug. Now, one thing we want to do is we want to finish it up by taking the actual tape off. So what we have to do is you got to sort of look at the tape. If you've peeled it out, put it around back, you have to start to peel off the corners. Whatever piece is on top is what should come off first. Now, this is an important thing. When you go to peel the tape off from the front, do not just simply take it and tear it up like this. What you want to do is you want to take it and peel it away from the work on a 45-degree angle. And yes, some of the paper will tear up with it. The trick is not to tear the paper as a whole. Okay? And you're going to do this to all four of your sides. And we have our finished drawing. Now the last thing you need to do is sign it in the bottom right hand corner. I intend to do just my initials. Nice and small. You don't want to do it in the center where it looks like a title to a book. You want the artwork to stand out. So there we have our finished piece. Teachers, there are PDF files that you can download from our Chautauqua website that point out all the learning goals and curriculum mapping and the curriculum points that we have covered with this program. Hope you enjoyed, and don't be afraid to click and share. Thank you.